What's up, YouTube? What's up, everybody? I'm Patrick, and welcome to the channel. Welcome to the Daily Monologue. The world is changing fast. Everywhere you look, politically, socially, economically, there's a shift happening. And if you've been paying attention, you can feel something new is brewing in the global order. It's been about a year since President Donald Trump took office. And from day one, his administration started shaking things up. He came in with a whole new approach, quote-unquote America First, which sounded patriotic on paper, but the way it played out on the global stage, well, it left a lot of countries frustrated. And so, when a superpower like the United States starts making sudden self-serving policy changes without considering how they affect the rest of the world, there is always a ripple effect. And those ripples don't just fade away. They hit other nations hard, especially nations already struggling with economic instability, security issues, or dependency on USAID and diplomacy. We saw this with changes in the immigration system, tougher visa restrictions, new immigration crackdowns, and all those adjustments to the USAID programs. These weren't just internal US policies. They sent shockwaves across continents. And of course, African nations were no exception. In fact, many African countries were among the most affected. Visas became harder to get, trade relationships got more complicated, development projects were delayed or downsized, all while Washington kept emphasizing its quote-unquote security interest. Now, fast forward today, you might be asking, what does all that have to do with Mali? Well, Mali just did something bold, something that many of us didn't see coming. But honestly, it's been a long time coming. Mali decided to give the USA a taste of its own medicine. So here is what happened. The Malian government introduced a new visa policy that requires US citizens to post a bond of up to $10,000 when applying for entry. Yes, you heard it right. $10,000. And guess what? That's exactly what the US once required from Malian nationals under a policy that was seen as discriminatory. And so Mali said, all right, let's play fair. You set the rules, we'll follow them equally. And so this move isn't just about money or bureaucracy. It's symbolic. It's about diplomatic reciprocity. The idea that if one nation treats you a certain way, you reserve the right to respond in kind. And so Mali sees the US bond system as unfair and unbalanced, especially since it targeted citizens from developing nations while pretending it was about quote-unquote security or quote-unquote illegal overstays. So Mali flipped the script. Now, these visa bonds are expected to affect business and tourism, including American interests in Mali's rich mining sector. And that's where it gets interesting, because the US usually doesn't like to be on the receiving end of its own policies. But this isn't just about Mali. This represents a broader pattern emerging across the continent. A quiet but steady rebellion against the old rules of global engagement. We're seeing nations stand up and say, no more double standards. Look at Namibia earlier this year. They made a similar move against the US and some European countries. And you know what? It felt refreshing. It felt like a breath of fresh air to see African leaders showing backbone, setting boundaries, and refusing to let former colonial powers or so called partners walk all over them. See, for decades, African nations have been told to be patient, to compromise, and to play nice, all while being taken advantage of politically, economically, and diplomatically. But we are in a new era now. The world's balance of power is shifting. New alliances are forming. Nations that used to be seen as dependent are now learning to leverage what they have. And Africa, oh, Africa has a lot to leverage. We're talking about the abundance of natural resources, human capital, growing market, strategic positioning, you name it. The world needs Africa more than it wants to admit. And that's exactly why Mali's latest move matters. And Africa, oh, Africa has a lot to leverage. We're talking about the abundance of natural resources, human capital, growing markets, strategic positioning, you name it. The world needs Africa more than it wants to admit. And that's exactly why Mali's latest move matters. So it's not just about a visa bond. It's about self-respect and diplomatic equality. It's about saying, we're not just gonna keep bending the rules just to keep you comfortable. If you want to engage with us, you'll have to do it on equal terms. And this kind of stance is contagious. It can empower neighboring nations. It sends a clear message, not just to Washington, but to the entire Western Bloc, that the era of blind obedience is over. You see, bilateral relationships between nations are supposed to be built on mutual trust and respect. Those are the two pillars that keep diplomacy balanced. But when one side constantly imposes unfair restrictions, sets double standards, or uses quote-unquote aid as leverage, that trust eventually breaks down. And when that happens, relationships crumble. That's when nations start pulling away, seeking new allies, forming new trade routes, and that's when you know the global order is shifting for real. So yeah, Mali's move might seem small on paper, just a visa bond policy, but symbolically, it's massive. It's a statement. It's Mali basically saying, we see what you're doing, and we're not afraid to reciprocate the same energy. And I respect that, because for far too long, African nations have been treated as if they don't have a say, as if they're supposed to just accept whatever comes from Washington, London, or Brussels. But times have changed. Young Africans are waking up. Leaders are starting to realize their leverage. And there is a new generation demanding accountability, fairness, and respect on the global stage. We are seeing a shift, not just politically, but spiritually too. A shift in mindset and a shift in energy. It's the realization that Africa doesn't need to keep asking for validation or permission. The continent is rich, not just in mineral, but in culture, spirit, and potential. And when African nations start operating from that awareness, everything changes. So to me, what Mali just did is more than policy. It's principle. It's a quiet declaration of independence in the diplomatic sense. A message that says, we are not beneath anyone. we'll treat you the same way you treat us. And that's the foundation of real equality, because fairness should go both ways. If the US can enforce strict policies on African nations, then African nations have every right to do the same in return. That's how the global respect is earned, through balance, through consistency, and through courage. And I think we'll be seeing more of this in the coming years. More African countries standing up, more leaders choosing dignity over dependency, more nations realizing that respect is not given, it's asserted. So yeah, I'm all for it. It's about time the tables turned, not in revenge, but in balance. Mali's move might just be the beginning of something bigger. A reminder that Africa is no longer just reacting to world events. It's starting to shape them. Guys, thank you for watching. Like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content. I'm out.